Some claim she dwells in the Americas, constantly at war with her rival. Others say she runs the most popular vampire nightclub in the world. A few believe she's the clan founder's lover, and that she is in the process of waking the Toreador Antediluvian. Beautiful and gifted, it is said none can look away from Helena unless she wills it. Mortals have died to be the first to witness her artistic creations. Her descendants all display an immense level of talent, exemplifying the traditional Toreador role. It is a stereotype few Toreador resent. Helena is a clan icon. Toreador want to get to know you, so they can get a little closer to her. Greetings, Kindred. I am Voivode Maquette, and welcome back to our World of Darkness, and it's Metaplot Monday. And today we're going to dive right back into lore sheets, because I'm busy. And this is fast. But it is stuff that I want to go over. This is an important part of Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition, because it ties you into the metaplot if you take things like this, and I love them. So as you heard from the introduction, we are going to be going over the Descendants of Helena lore sheet, which is a Toreador character-only lore sheet. Helena has been involved in Vampire the Masquerade since its original iteration, since the very first Chronicle setting that the old White Wolf Publishings put out, that was the Chicago by Night, and the issue with Gary, Indiana, and Chicago, and the Prince Loden. She is the ancient Toreador owner, disguising herself name as Portia, who runs the Succubus Club and is the perfect icon for what vampires in the early 90s and 80s should have been. So let's dive into this lore sheet, and we will discuss what I think about each one of the points, each one of the advantages you get for taking these. The first one, skin deep. No matter your standing, dropping Helena's name in conversation with a Toreador or a vampire who knows of her effectively raises your status by 1 dot. You can drop Helena's name once per story for this effect, or more often to make everyone sick of you. This is a hilarious addition to the game. I think it's fitting because we all know of those non-celebrities who gain notoriety because they know somebody. Name dropping is one of the tackiest things you can possibly do in society. However, it will get you into places. It'll get you to certain lengths in society. And I love the fact that it's represented here, and that's exactly what this is. If you're a Toreador who knows of Helena, you can literally just drop your name, get in there, and if you're smart, get out. It's tacky, and a lot of Toreador, as much as they like to produce themselves as being of a high order of society, they are kind of tacky for the most part. So that is a thing. Investing 2 points into this lore sheet will get you real talent. Unlike other vapid Toreadors relying on their faces and bodies alone, you are embraced for your talent. Choose one skill from craft, etiquette, or performance. Increasing the skill costs half the experience points rounded down. That such an increase would typically cost. You just have a natural talent. This is a nice way to actually have a character who can get a little further faster. If your character is... this is smart character creation at this point. This is 2 XP to invest in a character who you want to be good at a specific non-violent thing. Performance. I mean, I guess you could always be tricky and say that you are a martial artist and your performance is your martial arts. I mean, you're gonna have to get your storyteller permission on that one. I'd probably allow it. But the idea is that you're gonna be able to make it so that your character exceeds faster, that you are able to grow quicker in your chosen art form or your chosen state of knowledge. The etiquette background in there is wonderful, because interacting throughout Kindred society and understanding how to talk can be a learned subject over time, but it also shows that you are natural in that you've found a way to you're going to exceed your abilities when it comes to weaving in and out of Kindred society and social conflicts. So real talent, I think, is worth investing in if you're playing a Toreador character. Investing 3 points is embrace the stereotype. When the time comes, you can play the role of shallow Toreador, surrounding yourself with an entourage of sycophants, and throw a party that becomes a legend. Once per story, you may host a party to increase your status and or your influence by 2 dots with an invited group. The increase lasts as long as the party does. 3 traits to up your networking skills. That is a subtly deceptive ability right there. Being able to go, I am popular enough to throw a party so that individuals who are out of my league will come to that party to be part of the in crowd for the evening. This is social maneuvering on a higher level. This is great. This right here is, I mean, obviously this is built for a social character. So it really depends on what kind of game your storyteller is running. But this is something, if advice to storytellers out there, if you see that somebody has taken this on their sheet, this is a player who's looking for social intrigue and being able to rise the ladder of influence structure. If you're throwing a party for vampires, your status is going to raise just for that little amount of time, which will gain you audience with members of the court that you typically wouldn't have the ability to gain audience with. Now, I've seen in most games that I've played in, the prince is just wandering around in Elysium doing whatever he can, and any neonate can just walk up and say, "Sire, I have a request." That shit shouldn't happen. If you meet the prince, other than your acknowledgement, that's some weird shit. The prince doesn't just hang out. They don't. The prince isn't meant to be a public figure like that. The prince isn't going to put themselves out in that kind of situation. And by all means, run your games the way that you want to run your game. If you want if the prince is available to everybody, that sounds more like a sofa baron or a sofa prince, where it's a petty kingdom, a petty princedom, petty domain. And there's not enough kindred in the city to actually flesh out the council. But I know in the games that I run, the prince is barely seen, and when he is, you're in trouble. Or there's a major plot point coming up. But in this kind of situation, if you've got a character with like 3x, if you have a character with like 3 status traits in the game, and that'd be like just under Primogen, and they decide they're gonna throw they've made it so that they've asked permission that they can host an Elysium event. they could actually talk to the prince. They could gain the prince's ear. At that point, this temporary status trait that you're talking about that is only going to last a night could then be invested in to be permanent, to gain more power, to maybe overthrow the Primogen and take over, to gain maybe access to being a confidant to the prince if you play your cards right. So this is a very devious ability and should be used. By investing 4 points, you get Divine Purity. Unlike most within Helena's extended family, your perfection is more angelic than devilish. You can commit any sin, but you will always look innocent. Add 2 dice to your dice pool when making tests to avoid blame for your action. Divine Purity just kind of gives you this I wouldn't do that sense. You put off almost an aura of innocence, and it's almost like an involuntary defense mechanism when it comes to just who you are, how you put yourself off. This is something I think comes directly from being related to Helena. I mean, everything here does, but this seems to have affected your very aura itself around other vampires. So the fact that you get to add 2 dice to your dice pool to make people not blame you for your actions, that sounds very familiar. I'm pretty sure there was an old merit that allowed you to do that. The fact that it's reserved for Toreador right now. This is a kind of a fun thing also. I like all of these Descendant lore sheets, because even if you just decide to say that only one person can take each point, if multiple people take something from the same lore sheet, it would kind of be fun to say that they don't work on each other. You know? Like, maybe everybody but the person who has skin deep will fall for this kind of situation. But just a fun little side note on that one. Where investing 5 points into the Descendant of Helena lore sheet will get you a Succubus Club franchise. Helena succumbed to the beckoning in recent years, leaving the Succubus Club in Chicago to a manager once again. She bestowed a license upon you to establish a franchise Succubus Club in your domain. This rare honor guarantees the city's kindred respond to your call, as every vampire embraced in the last 200 years has heard of the Succubus Club. As long as the club remains open, the chase rating of your coterie's domain increases by 2 dots. You also have 4 dots to select among resources, fame, and status among all kindred. That's a very fun thing, because it doesn't restrict between sect boundaries. This is Anarch or Camarilla for the thought process of this with the status thing. But having it actually affect the coterie backgrounds is another thing interesting, because that's if you are part of the group, you're part of the in-crowd kind of situation. This affects the chase, and I think I'm pronouncing that correct, the CHASSE background in the coterie creation rules. If you take Succubus Club franchise, you're automatically getting a 2, which grants 2 to 4 blocks, 1 park, and its entrances, 1 small site, tourist landmark, hospital, mall. The site being the Succubus Club at that point. But this is something that you can take in consideration, because the larger your chase background is, the easier it is to hunt, due to size and impressiveness and the fact that it brings people into that area. So having a franchise for the Succubus Club actually kind of means a lot. Now, from what I understand, Helena has already come back from the beckoning call, from the Gehenna War, which is interesting because not many people have. The V5 timeline says, Helena was beckoned, as Menelae was, though she resisted giving in completely despite following the call all the way to Tunisia. While there, she massacred a score of Ashira delegates on their way to the Vermilion wedding, and gorged herself on their vitae. As she fought, she felt her potency withering until the call ceased entirely. This led her to believe that diablerie will allow her to stave off the beckoning, which she remains terrified of. To this end, she has returned to Chicago and enthralled Brett Stryker to embrace mortals from his herd for her to feed upon. She searches for a more certain way to remain free from the beckoning, and shapes Chicago through her schemes as she has since she arrived so many years ago. After Helena shattered the beckoning through mass diablerie, she ventured to Chicago and tried again to force her child into thrall, but the monster Helena had become was something new. Facing her changed sire, Eletria felt their bond unravel. She attacked the weakened Helena, injuring her grievously before abandoning her in the Succubus Club basement. Helena's story has been updated to quite some interesting ways, and I'm very interested to see exactly what happens to her. But as a Toreador character in a game, it's a good idea for the people who are playing Toreador to take a look at this lore sheet, because there are many things you can gather, and this is probably one of the few lore sheets that I haven't really just had well, this point isn't worth it, or that point could be written differently. This is one of the few that actually is pretty good all the way through. From being able to just drop names, that just screams Toreador, all the way down to owning a nightclub of such immense international Kindred fame. I think the Descendants of Helena lore sheet is pretty worth it. I am Voivode Maquette. This has been Our World of Darkness. Thank you for joining me for Metaplot Monday and this look at the lore sheets provided by Vampire the Masquerade, 5th edition. Good evening.